All right. And then we're also going to look at alien invaders. Alien invaders, here we indicated that some plants look so beautiful and you can easily, introduce them into your design, or to find that, you'll be introducing a very troublesome plant with potential of taking over the entire environment or the garden. And we know that alien species, also compromise the water resources, all right? Because they use a lot of water. So we need to know those plants so that we don't actually use them in our designs. Obviously, we'll look at amenity plants, which I indicated that we'll be touching, them throughout the lectures. All right, we'll be using, some examples. And then we looked obviously to the assessments. We indicated that the practicals where we visit commercial enterprises, but we indicated that currently we are not able to do that, because the university indicated that no practicals until the COVID situation improves. In terms of tests, we said there will be 2 tests, one next month and one in October. There'll also be assignments, and there's also going to be a project. I think I'll discuss the project on Wednesday. So please come for that project. I'm going to discuss that project on Wednesday. And then we're also going to write the exam in November. Now, the following slides are just going to look at the importance of having guidance. The importance of having guidance. If you look here, I'm saying these are beneficial aspects of well-being. You'll notice that gardens improve learning. That is why almost all the universities have nice gardens. Even UKZN, by the way, you go to main campus, there's a very nice, garden there. Agric as well, there's a very nice garden, but most of the time we just don't care. I mean, we just don't even visit the garden. We don't even go there to sit on the lawn, to read. But studies have actually shown that gardens improve learning. They improve concentration and memory. They reduce stress. They accelerate healing process. If you are sick, one of the best things that you can do is to visit a garden, is to go, where there are nice plants, where there's, a nice turf grass, and just sit there for, number of hours or, few minutes. And that will facilitate, that will fast track the healing process. All right. I mean, we know that flowers generate happiness. That is why buying flowers, for someone that you love is a sign of actually, wishing them happiness, wishing them love and all those nice attributes. All right. So that is why we actually need the guidance. All right. So this slides just look at, the aspects of well-being, the aspects of well-being. And I want to believe that homes with gardens, not the vegetable garden. Obviously, the vegetable garden is a good idea, but homes with well-designed landscape garden are actually good for health. All right, so such a home will really be good for everyone in the household. And I think this is a very important aspect. All right, the medicinal properties. You'll know that in the garden you'll have all sorts of plants. You'll have all sorts of plants, and some plants actually emit some chemicals with medicinal properties. Hence, there's the accelerated healing process attribute, which is closely associated with the gardens. All right. And then there are also economic benefits, associated with amenity horticulture, with gardens, with landscape. there is increased attraction to customers, for instance, increased property values. Homes with nice gardens often have a high property value compared to homes with no gardens. All right. So say you want to sell your house, one of the best things that you can do is to actually do landscaping, do bit of paving, plant few flowers, remove that old, grass, install a new one, and the value of that property will significantly increase. Now, this is very important. The reduced healthcare cost, reduced healthcare cost. That is why, in Pietermaritzburg, there is Pietermaritzburg botanical gardens. You go to Durban, the gardens, and the whole aim is to actually reduce the healthcare costs. You're right, because studies have actually indicated that cities with many gardens often have low healthcare cost. Remember, the healthcare cost actually affects the government because this government was to sustain the hospitals, pay the doctors, the nurses, buy medicine. So if people do not sick because they have, or rather they are surrounded by nice gardens, that healthcare cost is significantly reduced. And that money can obviously be used, for other pressing issues such as education, social welfare, the grants and all that. All right. And then there's issue of environmental benefits, associated with gardens or amenity horticulture. Improved air quality, for instance. I mean, that one cannot be explained. Remember, the more you plant, I mean, if you have many trees, if you have nice tough grass, you actually improve air quality. That is just well known. All right. Hence, we're often told to plant trees. The whole aim is to improve air quality. Reduced exposure to wind. That's another benefit. High wind velocity can be a serious problem, for our homes. And if you want to reduce that wind velocity, you can just plant few trees and that wind velocity will significantly decrease. All right, the issue of stormwater. We know that stormwater, can have bad effects, on soil erosion, for instance, and you don't want that. So installing a nice turf grass will actually, reduce that runoff from stormwater. All right, reduce soil erosion. I think I've just explained that. Reduced noise pollution. Obviously, if you plant trees, you are going to, reduce that noise pollution. All right. So these are just some of the environmental benefits associated with amenity horticulture. All right. With regards to property, a survey was once done which looked at, how property owners, rank landscape gardens, and it was very interesting. You'll see, really, some will find that a garden provides a safe and high quality play area for children. Some, in fact, 53% felt that it reflects positively on its owner. All right. But I think I like this one. It increases the real estate market value, and 44% of the property owners felt like that if you have a nice garden, the cost, or rather the value of the property will significantly improve. Purifies the air, 19%. So you can see that even surveys actually, agree with us. Okay. Just that, I mean, if we really don't care, you'll find that actually we'll miss out on a lot of these issues. But now that you've joined this module, I honestly hope that your mindset will change and you will take landscape or gardening services very seriously. All right. Now I'm just going to show you a number of pictures. This is in France. This is a very nice garden, well designed. With different plants with different shapes. So you'll agree with me that this is a very nice garden. But if I may ask, what is the weakness of this garden? What is just one thing that you don't like about it? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, I'd like to take the register. So you just write your name on the chat box. Yes, yes.
Prof, what's exactly asking us? You're asking us to state the disadvantage of a garden.
No, here in this slide, right? You can see the picture.
Okay, yes, I can see the picture.
Yes, yeah. So for this garden, my question is, what is it that you don't like about this garden? You get my point, right?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Are you willing to respond?
Can you give me a minute to try it, at least to think?
No problem. Sure.
Yes, bro.
Cheers. Anyone? Zamani. Just one thing ungayithandi ngale garden.
Prof. Mhlambe Dotela mhlambe uthi awazi ukucontrola irrigation system kanje.
Yeah, highly likely they're using drip irrigation, which can be controlled. All right.
But how about if you go rain kanje, because there's no shells.
Okay, but you have been to what, botanical gardens, right? There's no shelter, but it's a nice garden. Okay, if you look at this garden, my issue is there's just a lot of green. I mean, it's green throughout. There is no variability in terms of color, no diversity at all. It's just green, and I mean, it would be a good idea really to have different colors in the garden. Have plants with different colors, not just one color. That becomes very boring. All right. So even though the design is beautiful, even though the whole layout, the garden is balanced, it has that fountain in the middle. The plants are balanced. The size is beautiful, but it's just too green. All right. So that's my issue. And perhaps you'll notice when we move to other gardens that some gardens will actually look more nicer than this one. All right. Then this one is in Spain. It looks nice as well, but not that much. Seems to be busy. But it's not bad at all. And then this is South Africa. Can anyone guess where this is? Anyone?
I think it's Table Mountain.
Table Mountain. Do you remember the name of the garden there next to Table Mountain?
I don't know the name.
Okay, sure, but you're right. This is around Table Mountain, and next to Table Mountain, there's a garden called Kirstenbosch Garden. It has thousands and thousands of water. Scarce plants, how to call those plants again? Endangered plants. All right, so it's just one of the most important gardens in the world. All right, Bush garden. It's so beautiful. But it's more of a natural garden than, you know, a normal landscape garden. All right, but one thing again that we notice when we visit Bush garden is that they've made very good attempts, you know, to beautify the garden. All right, so even though it's more of a natural setup, but they've done more attempts actually to beautify the garden. All right, so it's just one of those very important gardens. And then this is in England, and it's again one of the most beautiful gardens. All right, and one thing about gardens is you know, including a water feature, it's always a good idea, and that is why making a pool has become so common these days. But you notice that people will often have a pool in their homes, but a very little regard with regards to the plants. All right, so they'll just have a pool, a bit of landscaping, I mean paving. Actually, they'll do paving, then the pool, but no attempts whatsoever to actually have plants, to have nice plants surrounding that pool. And those plants are very important because you're not going to get, you know, the benefits that we discussed, you know, those environmental benefits, those well-being, I mean, benefits associated with your well-being if you don't have those plants. All right, so you'll have a nice home with a nice pool, but you'll find that actually we are missing a lot because there are very few plants, you know, in that garden. All right, so it has to be balanced, and that's one point that I really want to emphasize. Your garden should have all the required attributes. All right, yes, it's a good idea to have a water feature. I mean, this looks beautiful. You have that water and it's reflecting the plants. I mean, it looks beautiful. But again, to have that water only without the plants, I mean, what's the point? All right. So you should actually bring together all these features, and then you'll have a well-balanced garden. And this is in Italy, very nice garden. Importantly, you notice that there are statues. All right, there are statues, and that is very common in gardens, especially gardens which are in the public space. For instance, if you go to Pretoria, the Union Buildings, there's a very nice garden there, and there's a statue, Oscar Nelson Mandela. All right, so that's very common. Again, if you go to Cape Town, some gardens will have statues. Same again, I mean, if you go to what UCT, there was a statue which actually became the center of 2015 protests. You remember the FISMA's 4 protests. There was a Cecil Rhodes statue which ended up being removed because the students were not happy about that statue, obviously linking it with the oppression, the apartheid. Hence it had to be removed. All right, so it's quite very common to have statues in gardens. You know, important figures are often immortalized in the form of statues, and they actually put in the gardens. All right, so that's very common feature as well. All right, so far it's clear, guys, right? Okay, so there's Lungani. I spoke with Lungani. I spoke with then Zamani, and then Zoliswa. Zoliswa, are you there? Zoliswa Mkungo. I think I met you in what, HPS 734? Are you there? Okay, she's not there. It's okay. But one thing I always enjoy about honors class is that you know, it's not a class per se, it's a conversation. All right, so we talk, and I don't want this class to be different. I want us to just talk. Let's just chat, really, as we go through the concepts. Let's talk. Okay. Okay, let me continue. Now let's look at landscape design. Just a few definitions with regards to landscape design. This is our first chapter, obviously. What is landscaping? What is landscaping? Landscaping focuses on beautification of the outdoor terrain and to some interior settings. All right, so that's the definition of landscaping. And you notice that landscaping combines the principles of art with the science of growing plants. That's very important, right? The art and the science. The art and the science. And when I actually give you when I give you the project, when you submit that project, I want to see both. I want to see the principles of art and the science infused together. So the landscaping, you know, focus on area where plants, turf grass, you know, have been used to actually create an outdoor living area that makes the area functional and visual pleasing. That's very important, right? You want to have an what is often called the outdoor home concept. You want to, I mean, inside the house you have a sitting room where you can actually sit, relax, and we want to actually take that concept from inside your room to outside. All right, and that is why we'll see some gardens having sitting places, all right, chairs, times even tables where one can sit. If you go to main campus again, especially next to the admin building, there is a concrete chair and concrete chair and what is it again? Concrete chair and the table, all right, next to that building, and it's on the lawn, and you have nice plants next to that area. All right, because yeah, we want to create that outdoor room. All right, so you want to feel comfortable even though you're outside. Okay, and again, you'll notice that now when you do that, that garden is functional and is visual pleasing. It's beautiful. All right. Why landscaping? Studies have estimated that landscaping can add as much as 15% to the resale value of a home. I think we actually spoke about this earlier on when we were talking about the benefits associated with landscaping. Now, the landscape provides the first impression of the property, and that is why the value of the home will increase by 15% if your home is surrounded by nice plants, a few water features. That home will actually impress the potential buyers, and they will be willing to pay anything to actually secure it. This is an example. All right, this is a very beautiful example. If you look at this building, really, maybe there isn't much, you know, which is very impressive about it. But these plants make a total difference. All right, they totally transform that building. If you can imagine, you remove that plant, all those plants, we remove them, you remove that grass, remove everything, you'll be left with a dull house. But take them back, it actually becomes so beautiful, and it actually improves, or rather increases the value of that home. Okay, I want to remove this. Okay, now here we're talking about landscape design. I think we've already, spoken about this, but for landscape design, I mean, you look at the arrangement of outdoor space, all right? Where you want to achieve all those benefits we spoke about, the environmental benefits, the well-being benefits, the economic benefits, all right? So you arrange those plans in order to get all those benefits, all right? You want to maximize those benefits. You want to get the best possible outcome, from that arrangement, all right? And if you look again to this picture, I mean, this is beautiful. Nice plants, and then there's that paving, so that when you walk here, you won't be wet, or you won't come dirty. But you'll move around the garden and nicely, without any issues. And when you move here, if you're not well, you will become well, right? If you are stressed, by the time you leave this garden, you will be less stressed, all right? Because we know from science that if you are stressed and you go to a garden with different colors, especially if you look at this garden, your stress levels become decreased. Why? Because when you look at different colors, especially plants, there are some hormones which are secreted by the brain, and your stress levels will actually vanish. All right. So that is why we emphasize the importance of having different colors in your design, because it actually relates to your health. It actually relates to how you feel. It relates to so many things. All right. So it's always important, really, to infuse different colors, different plants, different shapes in your garden. By so doing, we'll actually be, making the best thing ever, which will benefit the society, you, your family, and everyone who comes across that garden. All right. Now, we often talk about landscape designers. We also talk about landscape architects. The landscape designers have two roles. The first one is to show off the home or building to its best advantage. The second one is to create both an attractive and useful setting for the inhabitants. And then there are landscape architects. These guys, or rather this group, is trained in engineering, graphic arts, and architectural technology. They are skilled in designing functional plans based on interrelationships of people and their surroundings. All right. What is a landscape designer? These guys are trained in the art of design and science of growing plants. So this will be you guys, the landscape designer, because you also know the science of growing plants. I mean, you have been trained since what? First year on growing plants, all right? And then this module will come with a bit of art. Obviously, it's going to be a good idea to get, or rather to fine tune that skill. There are also programs that are used to actually make these drawings. All right. So imagine you have the art now of designing, and then you also have the science of growing plants. Then you become a very good landscape designer. All right. You can almost go to any home and say, I want to do your garden. You from scratch, you design that garden. You analyze the soil samples, you analyze the weather environment, and then you recommend the plants which can actually be planted in that particular home. All right, because you have all those skills. Unlike a landscape architect, the architect does not have the science. They only know the side of the art. They can draw the good plan, but they don't understand, or rather they don't know the science of growing plants. As a result, they are likely going to recommend maybe plants which cannot even survive that particular environment because they don't know even the crop requirements. All right. But you, on the other hand, you know the crop requirements. All right. So whatever you recommend is likely going to work because you have all that science. All right. A landscape designer, which is you, will know, the plant ID, will know the cultural requirements of the plant, will know some construction practices, will know the principles of design, which we're actually going to discuss. And landscape designers often work in nurseries, in garden centers, and landscaping companies. All right. So guys, my point is that instead of always thinking about working got Department of what, agriculture, growing vegetables, change that mindset, right? Consider other options. And this is just one option that I'm giving you today. All right. This is just one option. Landscaping. It's a serious booming business. You can make a living from landscaping. All right. Just need to be confident. You just need to, maybe take some short courses, post your information, because here at UKZ we offer only this module as far as I remember. All right. So after this, if you're really interested, take some modules, use YouTube. YouTube has a lot of information, especially on designs. In fact, even on how to actually do those designs, what to do, how to mix what with what. You'll find YouTube very resourceful. All right. So you can make a living actually from landscaping. There's so many companies that actually focus on landscaping. Okay. So this is just one good opportunity. Okay, before I focus on the considerations that one has to think about when designing a landscape, are there any questions? Let's talk. Are there any questions? Lungane, alengao. Economy boss. Sbu. Iyacaca.
Yonke into ise-right nje ngokwami.
All right. Zamani.
Yonke into sase-right, Prof.
Okay, Zoliswa.
Asilungiselana akuyena asa njengalele ebusoft nge-account usibonele kodwa yonke into ise-right.
Oh, okay. Ngusibone. Ngusibonelo wena kodwa i-account kaZoliswa.
Kuthiwa sorry for inconvenience.
Yeah. Yagozwa ke. All right, no problem. Okay. Okay, guys, let's continue. Imange, i-lecture yethu uqale ngubani? 9:35. Iphela ngabani? ASB. Anyone? Yeah, lecture.
11:15.
Ijabule.
Iphela ngo-11:15, ne?
Yeah.
First
Eh?
lecture.
Second lecture.
Second lecture for
And after single per lecture, then 11:15 per lecture is good.
Listen
It's
class
the-
rep 11:15.
Okay, cool. All right, sharp. Okay, guys,
Yeah.
let's now look at these 10 or rather 5 considerations in landscape design. Here, I usually ask a question to discuss the considerations in landscape design. All right. There are 5 of them. All right. So you list and then you give a definition of what that actually constitute. So the first one is functional. We're saying that the landscape design must be functional. We're saying the landscape design must be maintainable. We're saying the landscape design must be environmental sound. We're saying the landscape design must be cost effective. And lastly, we're saying the landscape design must be visually pleasing. Visually pleasing. Let's look at the first one, functional. We're saying a functional landscape will allow the easy accomplishment of work, recreation, movement, and leisure. That's very important. You don't want a landscape design which, kids cannot even play because it's so dangerous. So it should actually be functional. It should, people should move around that garden easily and not endanger themselves. Because if something happens and you actually designed that garden, you can actually be sued. All right. So it is very important really to ensure that the movement and leisure is not compromised. People can work and really enjoy that garden. So that's very important. The second one is that the landscape must be maintainable. You don't want a landscape with high maintenance cost. All right. You want a landscape with low maintenance cost, with low labor cost. You want a landscape with, which uses a low amount of inputs, fertilizers, pesticides, and water. You don't want a landscape which is going to increase your water bill significantly. You don't want a landscape which will require pesticides to be used now and again, especially considering that pesticides are not good for the environment. So you don't want a landscape really with plants which are often diseased now and again. You don't want that. You don't want a landscape design which requires high amount of fertilizers. You don't want that. So we're saying that the landscape design must be maintainable. Thirdly, we're saying the landscape design must be environmental sound. We don't want a landscape which is going to harm the environment. You don't want a landscape design which is going to compromise the soil. You don't want a landscape design which is going to compromise the water resources. And again, you don't want a landscape design which is going to harm the air, or rather the quality of the air. Rather, it should improve it. Hence, we're saying that you should be less dependent on pesticides. You should be less dependent on fertilizers. You should also be less dependent on water in order to maintain that garden, to be beautiful. A garden should actually survive a number of days without being irrigated. In fact, it would be a good idea to even have a garden which would be beautiful, which can be beautiful without being irrigated. A rain-fed garden. That's my proposition, that you actually require a garden with less dependent on water. Why? Because year in and year out, we're crying about our water resources. All right, every department, every country, everyone is complaining about the issue of water, and you don't want to waste that water on your garden. So that garden should be environmental sound, and that garden should also be cost effective. The installation and maintenance cost of that garden should be low. You don't want to spend a lot of money maintaining that garden. So it should be cost effective. You don't want to overplant, all right? You don't want to do what we often call improper spacing. The plants must be properly spaced, and you should never overplant because plants are expensive. You'll be getting those plants from the nursery, and some plants can be very expensive. Some are cheaper, but for some plants, you can pay 500 rands for one plant, or even more for some, especially trees. So you don't want to compromise that spacing. You need to use the right space in order to ensure that the garden is cost effective. And it is always a good idea to have an edging line to eliminate molding problem. I'm going to show you some pictures on how that actually looks like. And lastly, was saying the garden should be visually pleasing. It should be visually pleasing. A garden should not affect the aesthetic value of the landscape. What we mean is that, yes, it should be environmental sound, it should be functional, it should be, all the 4 factors or other considerations that we've just looked at. However, combining all of them, it should still be visually pleasing. It should be beautiful. So you should avoid having too many plants. You should avoid having a very busy garden. That garden has to be beautiful. You should have, plants with different foliage color, with different flowers, in order to ensure that it is beautiful. So that is very important. So those are the 5 considerations that you should always think about when you're designing a garden. Now, let's look at developing a landscape design. Developing a landscape design. There are 5 steps involved when you're actually developing a landscape design. And this is actually what your project will be looking at. This is what the project will be looking at. As I indicated, we'll talk about it on Wednesday, same time. The first step is you must develop a plot plan. The second step is that you must conduct a site analysis. The third step is that you must assess family needs. The fourth one is that you must locate and design activity areas. The last one is to do what is called plant selection and placement. So these are steps. And steps follow each other. That's very important, right? So if you are asked these steps, you should ensure that you give them in the chronological order. I hope that is clear. Now, in terms of developing a plot plan, you need to accurate. You need accurate house dimensions. You need accurate house dimensions. You need accurate house placement on the lot. And you also need to mark the existing walk and driveways. That's a plot plan, all right? Plot plan means you go to my house and you just look at where's the house, what are its dimension, where is the driveway, what are the existing walkways, all right? So that's basically what we develop, all right? Of course, we're saying we develop a plot plan, meaning it should be documented. You should make that plan, should draw it in the paper, right? So for your project, that's what you'll actually do. You'll have to develop a plot plan, all right? So a plot plan means you go to the house or the building and check what is there and draw it on the paper. And there are certain symbols that we use in plot plan, all right? For instance, needled evergreens, we use these signs, all right? When you use these signs in the drawing, we know that, okay, here, there's a needled evergreen plant, all right? Needled evergreen means an evergreen plant with what? With sharp shoots or with sharp leaves. That's what it means. All right. So you're not going to plant. I mean, you're not going to draw a plant like that one, but you'll just use these signs. And when you use these signs, we're actually going to know that, all right, there's a needle evergreen. And then broadleaf evergreens, we use these signs. All right. And when you use the sign in your design, we will actually know that, all right, there, there's a broadleaf evergreen. And then the deciduous shrubs, we use these signs. Of course, I mean, you know what is a deciduous fruit is. If you know a deciduous fruit or deciduous tree, you'll almost know what the deciduous shrub or tree is. For deciduous tree, these are the signs that you actually use in that plot plan. If there are vines, you actually use the signs as well, right? So you can use any of those signs, okay? Depending obviously where are those vines. If the vines are against the building, you lose that sign. If the vines are on the fence, you can use that sign or that sign. All right. And then if the ground covers, that's your ground cover. All right. You know what ground covers are. You'll use that sign. You just put the sign, and then whoever is actually looking at that plot plan will know that, oh, in that section there are ground covers. There are also hardscape materials. Hardscape materials are actually, materials which are not living plants, all right? And the examples will include paving, wall material, finishing, lighting, water features, and fencing. And again, there are symbols that we use to actually indicate that we have this type of material. For instance, if you use this sign, the first one, it means there's fencing with gate, all right? That is commonly used even in building plans, by the way. Often indicate that if there's a door elsewhere somewhere, or there's window, these signs are quite common. If there's stonework, you'll use that sign. If there's outdoor grill, there's another sign that you use. If there's brick, there's another sign again. All right. So you'll not draw the brick wall, but you just use those signs. And then obviously, when you have completed that plot plan, it's going to look like this. All right. And as you can see, different signs are used. All right. Which actually are the signs that I've just shown you, right? That those are the signs that I showed you, all right? So this is a very nice plan. It actually shows with the house, and it shows all different, those different trees around the plan. Okay, another one. And then there's site analysis. There's site analysis, which is very important. This step is very important because during site analysis, you are able to identify natural features, man-made features, as well as cultural features. Under natural features, you look at the terrain, for instance, which is the rise and fall of the land. You look at topography, which is very important because topography will assist you in deciding, which plants to plant where, or even whether to even put the plants or to put steps, some situations. If you go to Westville, the Westville campus, you'll notice that there are so many steps, around the campus. And it is because of the topography, the slope. The slope of Tespel is really so steepy. So, when they were designing the Westfield, when they were designing those gardens, they actually had to incorporate a lot of steps. And before you actually put those steps, there are equations that you're certainly going to use to decide. All right, those equations will guide you on what actually should be put where. Obviously, under natural features, there's soil quality, where you need to look at the soil type, the nutrient level, pH, texture, and structure. The nutrient level, maybe it can be hard for you to define it. That is why you can actually take the soil samples to the laboratory. There's one in Sidara in our situation in KZN, where they can actually look at that sample and tell you, what the soil type, the nutrient level, the pH, texture, and the structure. All right. So that's a very important step. Then the direction of surface water is very important as well, because that's going to assist you in designing the drainage system. For instance, the erosion, you need to mark, sections, within the design, rather within the landscape, which are prone to soil erosion, because that's going to assist you, when you're making some decisions. And then you also need to mark the existing plant material, the species name, quantity, and locations. We need to know that, because that material can actually be incorporated into the new design. All right. You don't actually have to remove everything and install new plants. No, you can actually use what is already, available in that place. Prevailing winds and velocity also have to be considered, because that's going to assist you in deciding where to put maybe windbreaks, where to put tall trees in order to block that wind. That's very important. Hydrography, the surface and underground water, that is also to be considered. Offside views, that's so important, guys. Offside views, that's so important. If maybe your house, for instance, is facing a sea, you need to consider that. You need to consider the plants that you're going to plant. You don't want to plant tall trees, which will end up obstructing your sea view. If your house is facing maybe a mountain, again, you don't want to put tall trees, which will end up blocking your views, to the mountain. So you should always consider the offside views. Sunlight and shadow patterns, they must also be demarcated, because they are going to affect your planting, or rather your plants, and how your plant behaves when the season changes. So that's very important. You need to know that sunlight and the shadow pattern and the microclimate of the site. You should also take that into consideration. All right. This is the sunshine and shade pattern. And this is why I'm saying that is important. If you look here, in summer, the sun is high, is very high in summer. So you'll find that the shade is somewhere here. The shade will be here. But in winter, the sun is quite very low, and you'll find that the shade covers up to here. All right. And this is very important in the sense that if you plant maybe a shade loving plant here, you actually need to think about how the change in season will affect the plant growth and development of that particular species that you've selected. All right, because we often talk about shade loving plants, we talking about sun loving plants. All right, so can you imagine if you have grown sun loving plant, then comes winter, the shadows is here. all right? And now that sun-loving plant is no longer receiving the sun because you did not consider the shade pattern throughout the year, all right? So these are the issues that should be actually analyzed when you are actually doing the design. It's very important. Same applies with frost pockets. We know that heavy air is, cold air is heavy, all right? So you can easily have a frost pocket in your home, all right? The low-lying area can easily become a a frost pocket. And it becomes very important really to know that, all right? So because the fact that maybe the average temperature in winter is 10 does not mean in your area, or rather in your house or in your yard, the temperatures would be 10. There can be some sections, within the design, within the home, where the temperature is so low, maybe 5, because of the so-called frost pockets. And you need to know those frost pockets because they are going to define, or rather they're going to determine which plant can be planted where. Because if you plant a frost susceptible plant in those frost pockets, that plant is certainly going to die. It's not going to survive winter. All right, so you need all this information. All right, so you can almost tell that the site analysis is quite a lot of work, and it requires maybe different skills. Hence, it's always a good idea to ask for help if you don't have all the skills that are required. This is a rain shadow, and this becomes very important if you have brick wall, around your home, because the rain shadow will affect the plant growth and development. All right. For instance, the plants which are grown next to that wall, you'll find that at times they're not going to access the rainwater. And when you'll be thinking that it has rained, the plants are happy, or to find that actually that wall is actually affected, that plant. All right. So you need to analyze that because that's going to assist you in making informed decision. All right. If you know that even if it has rained, that plant did not receive that water, then you consider irrigating. But first, you need to ensure that you have properly analyzed the environment in order to make those informed decisions. And then there are man-made features, which should also be considered. The existing building, existing landscape features, the poles, fence, walls, utility lines, and pipes. This is very important, guys. I'm sure you have seen, people are will be working in your home, and they will mistakenly hit the water pipe or the sewer pipe, and that's going to cause a lot of mess. You need to call the municipality to come and fix that, and that can be, very troublesome. All right. So those utility lines must be marked. All right. You need to mark those utility lines that must be known where they are, so that when the people now are here, they are working, they're developing that garden, they're not going to actually end up messing those lines and pipes. That's very important. Then the issue of cultural features, that's very important. You need to know the property lines. You need to know deed restrictions, the zoning regulations, right of ways, offsite noise and odors. You need to know all that, all right? Because some, places, they will say that these are the plants that you can plant. This is what you can do. These are the designs that you can actually have. The maximum tree height should be this. All right. Immediately, it's more than that. No, it poses a risk, to the properties, in that vicinity. All right. So you actually need to follow those restrictions and regulations, so that, your design does not end up, attracting legal challenges. Okay, now after you've done all this, analysis, you'll have a drawing like this, where you actually say, okay, here there is a low-lying area, there are heavy soils. I mean, maybe you've already analyzed the soils now here. Then here you say, okay, this side there's strong wind. Then you mark it really and say, okay, yeah, this is a driveway, there's strong wind here. Here there is warm, this place is warm and it has good soil drainage. All right. Here there's full sun and open. It's a full sun and open side. You make all these notes, which are actually going to guide you now when you're making those decisions, when you're deciding which plant to plant where, because what is the condition of the soil, what is the condition of the temperature, the wind issues, right? So these notes are very important. Okay, so they are part of the plan. Okay, this is the same issue, same notes that I'm talking about, and you'll notice here that they even demarcated the soil line, the drainage line. All right, where, yeah, for instance, they're saying there's a low-lying area here and it needs to be filled with soil. All right, so you make all those notes, because if you don't make those notes, you're likely going to give a wrong code, and then you start working all to find that you've actually undercoded. All right, and that's going to be on you. All right, because now you'll notice that I need more time, I need this place filled with sand, I need this and that. So it's very important to make all those notes when you're in the site. All right, so that you provide a good code and the correct code for your rather to your customer. And then you need to assess the family needs. You need to set up a meeting with your client, ask them what they want, ask them which plans they actually want. With regards to assessing family needs, for instance, you need to know the composition of the family. How many kids they have, what are their hobbies and special interests, attitude towards privacy, outdoor living, neighbors, and landscape maintenance, because this is going to help you, in deciding which plants you're actually going to need. Even in main campus, there are some trees which almost shed their leaves each morning. They actually drop a number of leaves, and that leaves a lot of mess on the floor rather in the driveway. All right, and as a result, someone has to go around the driveway, removing all those fallen leaves. All right, and that's high maintenance. So in your home, is there anyone who can be willing to do that? Or will you be hiring someone to actually clean your garden? And how much cost will be attached to that? You need to actually, probe all those questions. And you also need to actually know the preference of plant species and color. All right. So some clients will actually know a number of plants. And so you ask them, whether they have some preferences in terms of color. So these are some of the questions that will ask, your clients, when you're doing that interview, because that interview is so important. Because it's their garden, it's not your garden. All right, it's their garden, it's not your garden. You need to remember that. Even when you're making proposals, when you're making suggestions, you need to remember that it's a suggestion, it's not a command. All right, because it's not your garden. All right, so there is a need really to set that interview and ask those questions. Then I said you also need to locate activity areas. For instance, this is how you locate. You'll say, okay, the house is here. Then there's a laundry place somewhere. There's a children's play area here. There's a vegetable garden here. There's a living area here. Maybe this is where the pool is located, with chairs around the pool. All right, hence it's called the living area. Then there's a public area, driveway. So all those activity areas must actually be shown. Okay, and you show it using this bubble diagram. Say same thing actually. Yeah, there's even current tools area where current tools are placed. All right, so this is how you locate activity areas. All right. The living area that I spoke about, there's a pool, then there are chairs around the pool, service area. And then the issue of slope, guys, is very important. I'm about to finish. The issue of slope is very important. All right. So when you visit that garden, you actually need to calculate the slope, the percentage slope. And use a very simple formula, is the vertical distance divided by horizontal distance times 100. All right, that's how you calculate the slope. And after you've calculated that slope, you look now at this recommended slope table. You notice that if the slope is 2%, that can be used for sitting areas. You can put a patio or decks there. If it's 3%, you can actually plant your lawn there. 4%, you can have a walkway there. 10%, then you have to consider the driveway if it's 10%, and even install ramps. 30, then you start thinking about banks planted with grass. If it's 33%, you also have to consider ground covers and shrubs. If it's 15, then you need steps. You can see the 50% there. You need steps now if it's 50%. All right. So you calculate that slope, then you make a decision. And this table is a great tool in assisting you to make those decisions. Okay. Now, of course, when we're talking about the slopes, there are terms that we often talk about, like grading, cutting, filling. Grading will be smoothing a small area with, area of earth with a spade, rake, or massive bulldozer. We call that grading. Okay. And then there's cutting, is grading practice by removing earth from a slope. And then there's filling, where grading practice by adding earth to the slope. All right. So these are common terms that we actually use. All right. So at times you do what is called filling, and filling means you take soil somewhere and you put it in that area in order to ensure that it's level. All right. Grading, you remove the soil, you remove earth from that area to ensure that it is at the required slope percentage that you want. It's just a cross-section view of a graded slope. All right, and another slope before and after. All right, before it's just like this, it's just very steep, but after grading, you notice that you grade, then you can have place where you can build a house. You can even make a pond, within the design, depending, on your resources, obviously. All right. So this is the beauty of grading, but we know that grading is very expensive. I mean, hiring a TLB a day, you'll pay for about 5,000, depending on the type, but minimal 5,000. For some will pay what, 8,000 a day or even more. So grading is expensive, all right, but some gardens is the only option that we'll have. That is it for today. Are there any questions, guys? Are there any questions? Questions? All right, guys, if there are no questions, then I will see you on Wednesday, same time, same place. Yes,
Siyabonga. Wednesday, same time, same place.
yes, same time, yeah. All right, you guys, keep well. Thanks so much for coming. Sharp, sharp.